The British Columbia Institute of Technology acknowledges that our campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh.
Hello, my name is Lisa Cofton and it's your news update to 3:30 p.m. The British Columbia's NDP has unveiled its election platform for $1,000 gross rebate among the new promises worth about $2.9 billion through to 2027.
New promises include free transit for seniors in off-peak hours, mental health counselors in every public school, and eliminating the no pet clause in purpose-built rentals. NDP leader David Eby says the plan will make life better for families, youth, and older people.
$1,000 for the average household immediately in a rebate, followed by a consistent tax cut, $1,000 for the average household going forward.
Eby also says the party is projecting that everyone who wants to be connected to a family doctor or nurse practitioner will be by the end of next year. Terry Theodore, The Canadian Press.
Meanwhile, Green Party has released an election platform that's heavy on taxing the wealthy to support people's wellness, while the provincial Conservatives have unveiled a plan for making BC energy independent. A co-owner of Little Sisters Bookstore and Art Emporium says the Conservative Party's plan to sexual orientation and gender identity education out of schools would not be dangerous for queer kids. Our reporter Isabella Calisi finds out why.
Little Sisters Bookstore and Art Emporium has been a resource hub for the Vancouver queer community since the 1980s. One of the co-owners, Don Wilson, thinks taking SOGI education out of schools will lead to a crisis amongst queer youth.
But I just think that it's pushing all these kids in the wrong direction. And young kids, when they start being pushed back, then we'll start seeing a higher suicide level because they're afraid.
Last year, in the Legislative Assembly, the leader of the BC Conservatives, John Rustad, voiced his opinion about opposing SOGI.
Will the minister admit that SOGI 123 has been divisive, an assault on parents' rights, and a distraction on student education?
Rustad keeps this sentiment in his current campaign for the BC Conservatives. Wilson thinks that Rustad's rhetoric is out of line and will lead to more bullying and harassment. Isabella Calisi, BCIT's The Crow.
The Conservatives want Canada's lobbying commissioner to investigate whether Prime Minister Justin Trudeau violated ethics rules when he appointed former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney as an advisor.
The Liberals announced last month that Carney had been appointed chair of the Task Force on Economic Growth. He is to help the party shape its policies for the next election and will report to Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Platform Committee. Tory ethics critic Michael Barrett says in a letter to the Commissioner of Lobbying today that Carney is not registered to lobby federally, but his corporate positions put him in several potential conflicts of interest. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has previously accused the Conservatives of mudslinging and says the Liberals are fortunate to have the advice of world-renowned experts. Mia Rabson, The Canadian Press, Ottawa.
U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith has provided a roadmap for how prosecutors hope to prove their case charging former President Donald Trump with an illegal scheme to overturn his 2020 election laws if it ever gets to trial. Stephen Portnoy reports on what's next in the case.
With Jack Smith filing a 165-page document arguing why the election interference case should move forward, Trump's defense attorneys will now argue why it shouldn't. Judge Tanya Chutkin says they have until November 7th, 2 days after Election Day, to submit their reply. Chutkin will then decide whether presidential immunity protects Trump under the Supreme Court's recent ruling. Either side could then appeal her decision.
While the U.S. Supreme Court said former presidents have at least presumptive immunity for actions taken in their official role as president, the justices said they are not shielded from prosecution for things they do in their private capacity. The Two-Spirit Dry Lab is working to hold a ceremony to reawaken the Haida Nation's Masset dialect words for two spirits. We'll bring it over to our reporter Filip Kovacevic for more details.
Arlen Pruden, the lab's co-founder and a member of the Cree First Nation, says they are raising money to throw a potlatch. The Two-Spirit Dry Lab researches indigeneity, gender, sexual orientation, and geography. They aim to provide new knowledge to improve outcomes for Two-Spirit people and communities.
So when a word is spoken 3 times at a potlatch, it is either brought to life or it is reawoken. And for these Two-Spirit words, we're going to officially reawaken them.
A potlatch is an important ceremony usually held for births, marriages, and funerals. Philip Kovacevic, BCIT's The Crow.
Now Philip is joining us live. Philip, what does it mean to be two spirits?
Well, Lisa, it means someone who embodies both a masculine and feminine spirit.
When was Two Spirit Dry Lab formed?
The organization was formed in 2018, so about 6 years ago, and they work with Indigenous and settler researchers to help the Two-Spirit community.
Philip, thank you so much.
Thank you.
A local amateur botanist claims he is the first person in Canada to cultivate the Hyoscyamus insanus, the sister plant of the Hyoscyamus modicus. Both plants are henbane with medicinal contents used to treat pain. Our reporter Zach Ropko explains how this hobby could introduce a second henbane's seeds into pharmacology.
Drew of Gadger is a poisonous plant-growing hobbyist drawn to Hyoscyamus insanus by its rarity. Gadger says its high alkaloid content and its possibilities for medicinal use inspire him to share his cultivated seeds.
Definitely any insanus that are in cultivation going forward will be coming from me, as when it does flower and grow seeds, I will be sending them abroad.
Hyoscyamus muticus is an invasive species to Canada with pain-killing properties according to the Native Plant Society of Saskatchewan. Gadger hopes a pharmacologist can utilize the seeds for research one day. Zach Robko, BCIT's The Crow.
New NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has visited Ukraine in his first official trip since taking office and pledged continued support for Kiev. Karen Chamas has more.
Ukraine is closer to NATO than ever before.
Rutte met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv as air raid sirens twice went off in the Ukrainian capital. The new head of NATO vowed when he took office recently to help shore up Western support for Ukraine. Ukraine has been fighting Russia's full-scale invasion since February 2022. The nation has recently been on the defensive due to a relentless Russian army push in eastern regions. I'm Karen Shamas.
The Israeli military has ordered the evacuation of villages and towns in southern Lebanon that are north of a United Nations declared buffer zone established after the 2006 war. Karen Chamas explains the details.
The move is a sign that Israel may widen a ground operation launched earlier this week inside Lebanon against Hezbollah. Nabatieh is a provincial capital north of the Litani River, which formed the northern edge of the border zone established by the UN Security Council after the 2006 war in a resolution that both sides accused the other of violating. The warning came after Israel struck an apartment building in central Beirut, killing several civilian health and rescue workers just moments from the UN headquarters. Lebanese Health Minister Firas Abiad called the strike a war crime. Residents reported a sulfur-like smell following the strike in Beirut, and Lebanon's state-run national news agency, without providing evidence, accused Israel of using phosphorus bombs, which would be a violation of international law. The Israeli military did not immediately respond to a request for comment. I'm Karen Chamas.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly reiterated Canada's calls for a ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon in comments ahead of the Francophonie Summit in Paris. Canada is trying to arrange a conversation with representatives for Lebanon at the summit. Joly says she is very concerned about the risk of a wider regional conflict after Iran launched a large-scale ballistic missile attack on Israel on Tuesday night.
We absolutely need to make sure that this does not become a full-scale war, and that's why we need a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel for Lebanon. We also need to make sure that there's a ceasefire in Gaza. And for the rest, we know Israel has said that they would retaliate against Iran, so we want to make sure that ultimately it doesn't become a full-scale war.
In the weather today, it is promised to be partly cloudy with 17 degrees maximum. The wind speed is 8 kilometers per hour. Sunset is expected at 6:45 today. That's been your news update to 3:30 p.m. My name is Lisa Cofton. You're listening to BCIT's The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Good afternoon. I'm Ethan Van Dopp, and here are your sports headlines for 3:45. In baseball, the Milwaukee Brewers and New York Mets meet for Game 3 of their wildcard series tonight in Milwaukee with a trip to the National Series on the line. The winner will face the Philadelphia Phillies. On the mound, Tobias Myers is expected to start for the Brewers, while for the Mets, we are expected to see Jose Quintana. Jackson Trio looks to continue his success after he became the first Brewers player with multiple home runs in a postseason game. If the Brewers advance, it will mark the first series win for the team since 2018, while for the Mets, they have a chance to advance past the wildcard series for the first time since 2015. Mets manager Carlos Mendoza had a simple message for fans prior to the game.
To finish the job in this series and go back, we got to go and play two, but then we will have an opportunity to play in front of our fans. So I know they are going to be rooting for us. They've been doing that the whole year, and my message to them is continue to believe.
As we move to the pitch, late-game heroics from Harry Maguire gave Manchester United the draw with Porto FC in their Europa League match after a red card to Bruno Fernandes in the 81st minute forced United to play the rest of the game with only 10 players. 2 goals from both Alexander Lacazette and Malik Fofana helped Lyon cruise to a 4-1 win against Rangers FC. Tom Lawrence scored the only goal for Rangers. Hoffenheim blanked Dynamo Kiev for 2-0 for their first win in the Europa League, thanks to a pair of goals from Adam Hložek. UEFA announced the Champions League Team of the Week for Match Day 2. The Team of the Week includes Aston Villa goalie Emiliano Martinez, Lille right back Thiago Santos, and PSV center back Ryan Flamingo. Martinez became the first goalkeeper since March to post a clean sheet against Bayern Munich with 7 saves. Santos was a defensive powerhouse for Lille against Real Madrid with 6 recoveries and 6 interceptions as Lille upset Real Madrid 1-0. Some news out of the WNBA. Indiana Fever guard Caitlin Clark has been named WNBA Rookie of the Year. Clark received 66 out of 67 possible votes from a panel of sports writers and sportscasters. The other one vote went to Angel Reese of the Chicago Sky. Clark averaged 19.2 points per game along with 8.4 assists per game. Additionally, the WNBA announced the all-rookie team, which includes Clark and Reese, along with Raquel Jackson of the Los Angeles Sparks, Camila Cardoso of the Chicago Sky, and Leon Fabici of the New York Liberty. As we shift gears to hockey, the Calgary Flames have signed defenseman Tyson Barrie to a 1-year contract worth $1.25 million. Barrie was previously signed to a professional tryout opportunity by the Flames. The 33-year-old had 15 points in 41 games last season with the Nashville Predators. The New Jersey Devils and Buffalo Sabres get ready to open the season with the NHL Stadium Series in Prague, Czech Republic. Friday marks the first of 2 games between the teams. This game will mark the regular season coaching debut for Devils head coach Sheldon Keefe. Keefe was hired in May of 2024 and previously coached the Toronto Maple Leafs for 6 seasons. For the Devils, the season offers the opportunity to right the wrongs of last season when they finished 13th in the Eastern Conference. The Buffalo Sabres will look to end their postseason drought of 13 years, which is the longest drought in NHL history. The Sabres have also not won a playoff series in 17 years. NHL hockey has made its return to Quebec City, at least temporarily. The LA Kings will play 2 games in Quebec City as they wrap up their preseason, starting with tonight's game against the Boston Bruins. The Kings and Florida Panthers will both close out their preseasons in Quebec City on Saturday. Both games will take place at the Videotron Center. Quebec has not had an NHL team since the Nordiques relocated to Colorado in 1995. The NHL's new Prime Series Face Off Inside the NHL is set to debut tomorrow. The series will offer viewers a behind-the-scenes look that takes them inside the lives of NHL players, including Oilers captain Connor McDavid, Toronto Maple Leafs forward William Nylander, and Vancouver Canucks captain Quinn Hughes. Oilers forward Zach Hyman says the series will provide a unique insight for fans.
In the moment, fans don't really have access to how does this guy react in between periods, or how does this guy react after a game, or what does the captain say in the locker room after a hard loss or after a win.
The National Hockey League and the Players Association hope to begin discussing a new collective bargain agreement soon. A topic of discussion between the two parties is likely to be the rising cap, which NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman says is set to rise by $4.5 million. I'm Ethan Van Dopp, and those are your sports headlines for 3:45.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
When you think of Canada soccer, who do you think of? Alphonso Davies? Jonathan David? Jacob Schaffelberg? All these players have one thing in common. They were all raised and developed in Canada, but all left to play soccer in different countries. Jacob Schaffelberg developed in the MLS Toronto FC system, but later transferred to MLS Nashville FC after a few seasons with TFC. Alphonso Davies, perhaps one of the most predominant male Canadian soccer players, developed with the MLS Vancouver Whitecaps, but transferred to Bayern Munich in 2019. Jonathan David, who was born in Brooklyn, New York, but immigrated to Ottawa when he was 6, began his career in Canada with the Ottawa International Soccer Club in January of 2018. David then transferred to Ca-Gent U21, a Belgium soccer club where he quickly rose up their ranks. David now plays for French side Lille. Long story short, Canada has a history of developing players and then seeing them leave in search of higher competition and wages. My solution to this? Invest more in the Canadian Premier League. Media companies and the government alike investing more time and money into the league would, in my opinion, express more interest in the league. If players and fans alike notice higher skilled players staying in the CPL, it would lead to more players wanting to stay and play in the league. Not only would investing more in the CPL increase the product for fans, it would also have an impact on the Canadian national team. More money and media coverage would increase development of players, which could provide a positive impact on the Canadian national team. I'm Ethan Van Dopp, and that has been your Sports Comment.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King.